It's quite unbelievable and absolutely disgusting that we can find killers among children. And the two stories I'm going to tell you about today will leave you absolutely speechless. Both of the killers managed to spread such fear and terror in their communities, and they also disgusted the whole nation. But because of their age, they were and continue to be protected by the state. Don't forget that my videos can be quite graphic, so please bear that in mind. And with that, let's dive into our today's stories. On the 1st January of 2004, a 13-year-old girl named Bara was just getting ready to leave her friend's place. The two girls were playing together that morning and afternoon, and they promised each other that they would do this soon again. Then the two girls hugged, Bara put on her coat and shoes and left their friend's house. Bara, who was known for her bright eyes and smile and a great sense of humor, lived in the small village of Kmetiněves in the Czech Republic, which is about an hour's drive to the northwest of the country's capital, Prague. And so because this was a small community, Bara would usually walk home from school or her friends' houses alone. And even though she was very liked, Bara also liked keeping to herself sometimes, as she could be quite shy and didn't want to draw too much attention onto her. When Bara was about the middle of a journey back, the girl got this sudden feeling that she was not alone, almost like someone was watching her. And so she stopped and looked around, but she couldn't see anyone. She was in the middle of the road that was running through these empty fields, and so she tried shaking this strange feeling off and started walking towards her house again. But then, completely out of nowhere, a figure jumped out of the nearby bushes and Bara screamed. Later that evening, Bara's parents were sitting in their living room, getting all worried. Bara hadn't come home that day, and she definitely should have been back by now. They knew that Bara was spending most of the morning and afternoon with her friend, but they also agreed that she should be back by 6 p.m, and it was now 8 p.m, and Bara still hadn't shown. By 9 p.m, both of the parents were so worried about their daughter that they decided to contact a few of their neighbors and go look for her. They even called the police, and so by 10 p.m, a group of about 20 people set off to help look for Bara. And just before midnight, they would find her. Bara laid on her back in a field near the river, just about a few hundred meters away from her family home. The police immediately secured the area and practically had to drag her parents away from the scene, as they both wanted to run to their daughter and hold her in their arms. The area was searched for any clues or evidence, and the police would swab various surfaces for possible DNA. Even though Bara was only 13 years old, the positioning of her body and the fact that she was naked from the waist down suggested the worst to the investigators. Her body was taken into the morgue, where a full autopsy was later conducted, and unfortunately, it would turn out that Bara had been sexually assaulted by her killer. The investigators launched a manhunt immediately, and in the local pub, they kept collecting DNA samples from the saliva of all local men they could find. But for months and months, they had absolutely no luck in getting any further with this case. And in the meantime, the whole community was broken by the sudden and horrendous crime, and they feared the worst, that the killer might strike again. It wouldn't be until 9 months later when the police decided to zoom in on people that were closer to Bara's age. Because of the sexual assault, the investigators hadn't even considered the idea that the killer might have come from Bara's circle of friends, or people she might have known from school. And so they increased the search pool and started asking for saliva samples from even younger men and boys under the age of 18. And finally, the sample 632 was a match. This belonged to a 13-year-old boy named Robin Prokopec, and he lived in the nearby village and also went to the same school with Bara. And so the investigators brought him in for questioning immediately, and Robin would soon confess to his crime and would also give a detailed description of what he had done to Bara. Robin would have been only 12 years old when he decided to follow his classmate on her way home, and then scare her by jumping out of the bushes with a knife in his hands. When Bara started screaming, Robin ran towards her and brought her to the ground, and then started stabbing her over and over again. Bara tried fighting the young boy off, but she stood no chance. When Bara went finally still, Robin dragged her body out of the road into a field, where he then proceeded to rape her dead body. Based on everything Robin said to the police, he was then ordered to undergo a series of tests to determine why such a young boy could do something like this. It would be found out that Robin suffered from major sadistic and necrophiliac tendencies, which means that basically Robin was aroused by the fact that his victim had not been capable of rejecting him. But unfortunately, due to his age, he could not have been trialed like an adult, and so was largely protected by the state. Robin would then be sent to the psychiatric hospital in Bohnice, that is located in Prague, and he would spend there 5 years. He started working with several psychologists to address his abnormal behavior, and he would also be prescribed medication that would stop his body from producing sex hormones, which is as close to castration as it can get. But in 2010, he was let go as a free man. He would never really live a normal life and would continue to struggle with the law. A year later, in 2011, Robin, now renamed to Robert, would stop his visits to the psychologist and so would no longer get his access to his medication. And so all his sadistic tendencies would slowly come back. He would start experimenting with drugs and would be constantly getting into fights and all sorts of other trouble. And then in July 2013, Robin, who was strapped out of cash, robbed his girlfriend's grandfather of 60,000 Czech crowns, which is about 3,000 pounds or $3,700 now in 2025. The same girlfriend would then go on to tell that Robin always wanted a tattoo across his chest that would spell "Do you remember me?" and then the date 1st of the 1st, 2004. He allegedly then did have it tattooed in the end, and this was of course a nod to the murder of Bara. In 2014, together with a friend, Robin would rob a man who just won a large sum in the local casino, but both men would be soon arrested by the police, and Robin would be finally sent to prison for 6 years. He was released back in 2020, and according to the psychiatrist Želmíra Herová, it is just a matter of time before he strikes again, as without his medication, it is almost inevitable for it to happen. It's really quite unbelievable that, because of his age, he could have never been sentenced to any prison time for the murder and rape of Bara, and that none of this is even noted in his criminal records. And so he will continue to be protected by the state for the remainder of his life for this. On the 12th February in 2015, a 13-year-old girl named Eliška was in a bedroom getting ready for her date. Eliška, who lived in Teplice in the Czech Republic, was usually full of life. She loved going out with her friends, she liked to sing and play her guitar, and above all of this, she absolutely adored riding her horse named Philip. But that day, Eliška wasn't really in the best of moods. A few days earlier, she had agreed to go on and meet one of her classmates named Daniel, who was 14 at the time, and Eliška really wasn't looking forward to meeting him at all. The young pair started hanging out together about a week earlier, but since then, Eliška started having doubts about the young man. He began acting in a really weird way around her, and was sending her all sorts of disturbing sounding texts. And so when Daniel asked her out, she said yes just because she actually wanted to break up with him. After Eliška got dressed and ready, she walked into the kitchen to quickly chat with her grandmother. Eliška hadn't really told her where she was going that evening, but instead, she made up a story that she was actually going to see one of her friends, and that she would also spend the night with her. Her grandmother knew that Eliška would do this from time to time, and so she really didn't ask her more questions. And so Eliška just hugged her grandmother, said she would see her tomorrow, and then left the house. The following day in the evening, at the opposite side of the city, a mother of one was doing some house chores when she decided to do the laundry. So she grabbed a basket and started gathering clothes and linen that needed washing, when she came across trousers and a t-shirt that had some red paint on it. She put the basket down so she could have a better look, and when she unfolded the clothes, she realized that that wasn't paint. It looked like dry blood. And so panicked, she marched into her child's room, and when she got there, she saw that her son was sitting calmly on the bed, playing with a kitchen knife that he was running up and down his arm. She showed him the stained clothes and asked where did the blood come from, to which he replied that he had done something terrible. She didn't know what that meant and so began asking him more questions, but then it all clicked for her. She asked him for the keys to the wooden shed they had several miles away from the house, because she actually gave him the keys the day earlier, as he wanted to take a friend over there and spend the Valentine's Day together. But he refused. He said that she shouldn't really go there now, but maybe they could all go tomorrow instead. But his mother wasn't budging. She yelled at him to give her the keys right now. And so after a while he said, "Okay," and handed over the keys. The woman grabbed them and ran out of the house into her car and began driving towards the shed. But on the way, she also called her husband, who was a truck driver away on a trip in Germany. She told him about the clothes and what their son had said to her, and so her husband asked her not to go inside of the shed but to call the police instead. And so the woman agreed and pulled into the parking lot and then proceeded to dial 158, which is a number to call the police in the Czech Republic. When two officers arrived to meet with the woman, she handed them the keys to the shed and pointed them in the direction of where it was. They thanked her and walked over to the small wooden unit that was located among a few dozen similar sheds scattered around the piece of land. The officers stepped onto the porch and unlocked the door, and when they opened it, they realized that they were looking at a scene that could have been taken right out of a horror film. In the middle of the small room lay a girl that was covered in dried blood. She had multiple stab wounds, mainly in her neck, and there was a single flower laid on her chest with a small Valentine's Day card right next to it. The officers rushed over to the girl to see if there was anything they could do to help her, but they were too late. The girl had already died. And so, knowing that this was now a crime scene, they secured the premises and called in for backup. But before they would do anything else, they really wanted to speak to the woman again. They didn't divulge too much information to her about what they actually found in the shed, but instead asked her about her son and what he actually said to her. And when she explained, they knew that they needed to talk to him right away. And so one of the officers drove back to the woman's house to see if they could find her son there, but the flat was now empty. However, a dispatcher would soon take a call from a flat about 10 minutes down the road to say that they have a boy in there with them who claims that he had killed his girlfriend. So another police car would be sent to that address where a 14-year-old boy, Daniel, was arrested. Daniel laid on the floor, calmly waiting for the police to arrive, but next to him was sitting one of his friends who was sobbing and kept repeating to the officers that it wasn't his fault, he was ill. Because of his age, Daniel was not brought into the station or jail, but was instead sent to the Boletice's diagnostic center. When he was interviewed, he immediately confessed to what he had done to his girlfriend, and he also told them who she was so that her family could be notified. The victim was, of course, the 13-year-old girl Eliška, who the previous day had gone on to meet Daniel at his parents' hut. The girl was first strangled and then stabbed 5 times into her neck, with one of the blows being so hard that it broke her bone. Daniel also went on to say that he had actually planned Eliška's murders for a while, and that he had killed her because of another girl he had been seeing. He also wanted to dismember her, but for an unknown reason, he didn't attempt that in the end. Apparently, he loved sniffing and tasting blood. He also said that he felt no remorse for doing any of that, and that he didn't care whether Eliška would live or not after he had left her in the shed. Daniel would also tell the police where to find the knife he had killed Eliška with, and also his diary. This contained pages and pages of highly disturbing content, where Daniel would map out who his victims would be, and also share details about his feelings and thoughts, like his support for Hitler, or the fact that he had killed 25 cats. Incidentally, it would also be found that the girl who was kneeling next to him as he was being arrested was actually supposed to be his next victim. The worst part of this story is that Eliška's death could have been likely prevented. Daniel was already known in the community for being abusive and dangerous. Not only did he run around the town dressed in a costume from one of his favorite video games, Assassin's Creed, but he also recently broke into the local disco called Uno, where with a gang of his friends stole all sorts of merchandise and then drenched the place with water from the emergency hose. He would often tell his mother that he was all messed up in his head, and that Daniel's behavior got so bad that he would often play with a knife and fantasize about all the people he could kill, as he claimed that he just loved how the blood ran. He even got so far that he actually killed and gutted his mother's cat, and then several months later, he pushed his friend from a 12-meter drop down to the elevator shaft. His friend luckily survived, but Daniel was brought in to see a psychologist, Dr. Pavel Kozlik, who made a full assessment of Daniel, but again, because he was underage, the psychologist didn't take this any further. He only prescribed some medications for Daniel to take and hoped that this would really solve the problem. But then in the end, the court actually took too long to address Daniel's crimes, and so he continued to live at home and would eventually lure Eliška out to the shed where he would brutally murder her. Eliška was laid to rest in a white coffin draped in flowers in Dachcov's graveyard, and a funeral was attended by 200 people who were all absolutely devastated by the girl's death. The funeral was even attended by her beloved horse Philip, who marched behind Eliška's coffin. Since being placed at a facility for dangerous and disturbed minors, Daniel made multiple threats that if he ever got out, he would kill again, as he just couldn't stop himself. He did stay at the facility for at least until his trial in April 2016, but again, because of his age, the verdict has never been made public, and so we actually don't know whether Daniel stayed locked in or whether he is now roaming the streets free. And so this brings us to the end of our episode. I probably don't have to tell you how much debate and outrage these two murders sparked. And it really shows how bad the jurisdiction system can be when it comes to minors. And to be honest, if you're 12 or 13-year-old and you can think of doing something like that and then actually go and do it, then you shouldn't be treated as a child. You absolutely should be put in prison for your crimes. Now, unfortunately, as of 2025, the age still remains to be 15 for any minor to be trialed properly for their crimes, which is really infuriating because nothing has really changed. And that is, of course, only taking the age when they actually committed a crime, not when they are being trialed for it. I mean, as you can guess, my stance is pretty clear on this, but you let me know what you think of it. I will see you with a brand new episode next Friday, but if you like this one, then please subscribe. I would really appreciate it. Until next time.